My name's Rana, and we're here at 5 Points Fest with Khary Randolph, and you're watching Comics Verse. You've mentioned more than once that you've set certain goals for yourself in the comic book industry, and as a comic book artist. And do you think in the past couple of years you've come closer to where you want to be as a creator? And do you think the industry's changed since you started? How do you feel about that?
I mean, as a creator, I don't think you're ever fully happy. like, part of being a creator is misery because you're always like trying to strive towards the next goal. And even when you hit that next goal, it's never good enough because you're like, oh, but now there's this goal further out. So like, I'm very happy with where I am in my career, but I'm also pushing for so much more. Um, but that said, I feel like this is like a great time to be in the industry just because I feel like different voices are being accepted now more than ever. And you don't, back in the days, it seemed like you needed to get a co-sign from either Marvel or DC. I don't think that that's really a thing like it used to be. Like, working for both of those companies is great. Obviously, I work for both of them on a regular basis. But I don't feel a need that I have to fit what I do or my style or my voice to what they want. You know, I can kind of do my own thing. Either they go for it or they don't. I can go 5 million other places these days, which is honestly great for everybody. Black was a crazy thing because it came together kind of fast, honestly. I was approached by Kwanzaa, the kind of like the creative force behind the whole book. He approached me at New York Comic Con that October, I guess it was 2015, and he was just like, "Listen, I got this project. I think you'd be a good fit for it. Let's have lunch and talk." And I was like, "All right, bet," because I've known Kwanzaa for a long time. We've tried to work together for years. It's never really worked out, but if Kwanzaa feels like this is something I need to be a part of, I'm always gonna listen because I feel like he's just a smart dude. So we met up for dinner actually one day, and he was like, "Listen, here's the pitch. Imagine a world where only black people have superpowers." And I looked at him like he was crazy, and I was like, "All right, you're gonna piss a lot of people off, but also I think that's kind of a genius idea, and I think we could do something cool with that." And he's like, "Yeah," and so I was like, "All right, I'm on board." And then it was also a thing where I knew I wanted to do something different creatively, because all my stuff, I tend to switch styles a lot, but it's all in the same kind of cartoony animation vibe. And with this, I told him, I was like, I want to do something different just because the subject matter is a little more serious, and I'd like to approach that in a similar kind of vein. And that was kind of the impetus for everything we've been doing ever since. And we did not think it would be as successful as it was, if I'm being 100% honest. Like, I remember when we started the Kickstarter, we wanted $30,000, and we thought we'd have to work all month for that 30K. And when we got it in like 4 days, we were like, oh, like, oh, maybe there's like an actual demand for what we're doing. And so I think that set a precedent for everything going forward. Like, the more we put out, it seems like the more people actually respond to it. And I mean, there's been pushback, but not even as much as I thought there would be, too. Because I think once people read the book, they realize that I think some people thought maybe it was like an anti-white book or something like that, which is totally not what the book is about, like, at all. It's just like, it's a concept book. It's science fiction. It's like it's a what if, you know? And I feel like it's been received great, and I'm just happy that people dig it, you know?
To talk about another super interesting project of yours, you're working on Mosaic. Is this the kind of character I think that you envisioned you would work on creatively in like the superhero realm? Like, is this something you wanted to be a part of creating going into the, because I know you grew up reading comics, and you mentioned before that I think there was a sort of lack of a variation in superheroes.
Like when I got the concept, I was more excited about the concept itself of a character that can jump from person to person and regain all their abilities and all that stuff. The fact that he was black didn't even really mean much to me. Like it's a plus, it's cool, but like I really care more about just telling cool stories, and the concept was strong enough to me that I was like, yeah, this would be a cool thing to do. And plus the idea of adding on to like the Marvel lineage just spoke to me. Like I felt like the concept, the whole Marvel thing of like a character who gets great abilities, but also there's a downside to that, and what you do with that, that's like classic Marvel, you know. And when it was like, yeah, this guy, he's a basketball player, he's successful, and then he gets superpowers, but he loses his entire body, which is all he knows is like using his body to gain what he has, and now he doesn't have it. I thought that was a great kind of play on the whole Marvel twist, like the great power, because the first issue, the guy's a dick. Like he's not a nice dude, and so the whole point is to show him kind of progressing as a person and becoming and showing what he can become if he kind of switches his mindset a little bit and gets humbled a little. So just that part alone was enough to make me say I want to work on the book. The added fact that he's a minority character is cool to me because I felt like he's a minority. This is a dude who he's a basketball player. I feel like I can't play basketball well at all, but I'm a giant sports fan. And so I felt like I could capture that part well. And I was like, if anyone's going to be drawing it, I better be drawing it because I'm like, this is a black guy who likes basketball. I'm a black guy who likes basketball. Like, it's a good fit, you know? And so it's dope when you can be at a show, these kinds of shows, and then people come up and they say, yeah, thank you for making that because we don't see characters like that every day. So that's the part that's cool to me, that you can see it making a difference in people's lives, and they say, oh yeah, I gave this to my son who thought it was so cool that there was a character who looked like him, like that's the kind of stuff that makes you say, all right, I guess this is worth it, What I liked about Morris was that he is a black man, but his defining characteristic isn't that he's black. Like it barely even comes up in the book itself. So like, and I feel like really that's what it should be. It should be about an interesting character, not the fact that someone's black or that they're Asian or they're gay or whatever. It should be that they're an interesting character who just so happens to be fill in the blank.
So there's been a lot of discussion now, this idea that diversity doesn't sell. You've worked on a number of projects, DC and Marvel and independently. Across all of that, do you think that's true? Do you think it's substantial?
I mean, I think it kind of echoes what I was saying before, where diversity that's just a gimmick, it may not sell. I mean, at the end of the day, it's really about, one, it's about telling good stories, and it's about like promotion and making it known that you're telling good stories. Like if you're just saying, hey, we keep hearing people want, Asian characters, so let's put out an Asian character. That's not enough. Like you gotta actually craft something to where it can it showcases what's unique about that person, but also can speak to everybody. Because at the end of the day, it's not the race or the orientation of the character. It's how does that character relate as a human. Like that's really what'll keep your character around. Like I read comic books all my life that happened to star white characters, but I never even thought about it that much because I was relating to what the character was going through. And in general, I mean, I think you see things like Miss Marvel. That book does great, and I don't think it's because she's a Muslim American. I think it's because it's a well-written book. And I think just like Miles Morales, people love Miles Morales, and it's not just because he's black. It's because they like his character. Diversity is important. I don't know if it sells, but I know that I'm a consumer, and I'm not gonna buy something just because a character's black or whatever. But if it's a great story and they happen to be black, I might be willing to give it more of a shot. You know.
You went to SVA and you have a background in animation, right? Um, and there are a lot of, especially in comics, I see this. There are a lot of sort of experimental projects that bridge like music and comics or like animation and comics. Have you ever thought about bridging those two, animation and your love of illustration, to create something, or do you think animation was kind of like a prelude, like segue into your comic career?
Well, it's funny because I think, all right, so I always wanted to do comic books from like, as soon as I decided I wanted to be an artist, I wanted to be a comic book artist. I never had an interest in animation. Like, I love animation, but I never had interest in doing it because it seemed like it was a lot of damn work. like for real, I animated one thing in high school in a class, and I was like, so I just drew like 100 frames for about 2 seconds worth of work. I'm like, this does not compute. Like, why would anyone do this? This is insane. And I'm like, I'm not lazy, but at the same time, like, I have a very short attention span. So I was like, let me focus on comics instead. And what happened was, I think I grew up loving American comic books and 80s cartoons, and part of that happens to be Japanese animation. And so all those, in video games too, like I grew up on a lot of video games, so all of that kind of combines into a style that reflected what I was into. So people think that I'm an animation guy, and I've worked in animation before, but that was only because I fell into it by accident. Like, it was more of a thing where people were like, you're halfway there already. You might as well just do some animation work. So in my mind, I already feel like I do kind of merge the worlds because my style is just, it's already, every time I'm drawing a book, I'm looking at it like it's a movie or a cartoon already. I'm just freeze framing it and putting those in panels. If anything, in the future, I would like, I love hip hop, and so I'm always looking for ways to kind of bring that side to what I do on the comic book side, because I feel like there's still a niche that's not being served for. There's a hip hop people love comic books, and I feel like there's not a lot of books that really reflect that. So on some level, yeah, I'd like to tie those together more than has been done in the past.
What shaped your specific style, especially in your, for example, academic career? Did a lot of that change, or do you think it's been entirely your style is based on sort of what you grew up seeing and loving, and you developed it that way, or did it change as you sort of went into SVA and after?
I would say that the core foundations of what I do now is still based on what I loved as a kid. So, like, I'm always drawing for myself when I was 13 years old. I'm thinking about what I would think was cool back then. Now, that said, when I went to art school, obviously I was introduced to a lot more stuff, a lot more. I learned about art history, and I learned about not only the artists that I like, but the artists that influenced them. And, you learn about, Impressionism and Expressionism and all this other stuff. So I think my worldview expanded. So now, I might include things like I might be influenced by, like, Alphonse Mucha or Klimt or things like that. But still kind of, like, it reinforces what I still love. What I still love is cartoons and comics and video games. And so that's still the core foundation of how I draw. It's just I have more knowledge of stuff, so I can say, today I want to do like a Frank Frazetta type composition where he does a classic triangle thing, or like I want to do some, chiaroscuro, so I want to do some heavy darks and white black shadows and highlights and stuff like that. So like there's more thought into what I'm doing, but it still translates into like this tunnel of I want to draw cool shit,
So, who's your favorite artist then, growing up?
I get asked that question, like it's either that or my favorite character, and I never have a good answer to that question because it changes literally every day. And I have so many influences that I don't like. I can give you like a top five maybe, but like I grew up on like Jim Lee and like Rob Liefeld and the whole Image comics thing in the 90s still influences, like I still look at those books all the time. But I also love, like, you know, like same like Joe Madureira. Like I love the guys who have a lot of energy and a lot of motion to their work. And still there's movies that influence me. Like I still watch the 86 Transformers movie probably like 3 times a year just because I just love it so much. Or like I still watch Akira at least once a year. Akira's a little bit harder because that thing is so damn long that like I gotta watch that over the course of like a week. But like, so there's not specific artists, but there's specific things I look for in art that I'm always trying to find. Like I love Stuart Immonen and like Olivier Coipel because they're guys who draw American style comics, but they still understand how to exaggerate well enough to where it's realistic, but it's also a little cartoony. I love guys that can master both. So that was a long question, like a long answer way of saying I have no idea, but I have an idea, but not really.
I think it's fair. I think you gave me a lot to work with, so that's totally fair because it was an unfair question, I think. Yeah, the next one was going to be: is there a character or a series you really want to work on?
Yes, I mean there's certain series that are like on my bucket list. Like I love Teen Titans. Like based on really not even from the comics. I love the show. So like I've always wanted to draw something like that. I love Spider-Man because Spider-Man embodies a lot of the stuff that I love about comic books in general. I feel like I want to draw a Batman book just because Batman's cool. I don't know if they're ever going to let me because my style is not that dark. But in theory, I would love to draw a Batman book. One of my favorite books of all time was a book called Next Wave that came out from Marvel in like the mid 2000s. And I feel like no one even read it because it didn't sell that well. But it was just one of those books. It was Stuart Immonen and Warren Ellis, and it was just like a fun, dumb book that didn't take itself that seriously, but it was just so like every page was just vibrant and like exciting, and you didn't know what would happen every time you turned the page. And either I'd want to work on that book or a book like that book where it's just like sometimes I feel like comics forgets that it's supposed to be about having fun, or at least superhero comics. A lot of superhero comics tend to take themselves very seriously, and I'm like, yo, you're still dudes running around in like spandex, punching each other in the face. That's not that serious. So those are the kinds of things I would like to work on, or that I like to work on in general.
I think that question made up for the last one a little bit. Just a little.
Just a little, just a smidge.
Thanks so much for letting us interview today and sitting with us.
My pleasure.
This has been Comics First. For more content like this and interviews and videos and podcasts, visit us at comicsfirst.com. Thank you for watching.